Welcome back to the CNBC special broadcast coming to you from the Intercontinental Mauritius Resort, Balaclava Fort. Still with me, Mr. Ken Poonoosamy, Chief Executive from the Mauritius Board of Investment, George Chung, Chairman of Cross Border, Raj Makood, Executive Director for the Joint Economic Council here in Mauritius, and Mr. James Benoit, CEO of AfrAsia Bank. Now, gentlemen, before the break, we discussed the benefits to Mauritius' growth story. Let's look at some of the impediments. Mauritius has held up well, but not been immune to the ongoing crisis in Europe, the sovereign debt crisis. Economic growth down to 3.3% in 2012. Gradual recovery expected this year to 3.8%, 4.2% next year, but nowhere near the 5% average we've come accustomed to with the economy. In an environment like this, when you are dealing with investors, Ken, how do you create certainty in an environment of uncertainty?
Well, I would say that the fundamentals remain the same in terms of sound macroeconomic policy. I would say the intrinsic values in terms of good governance, in terms of rule of law, in terms of the business climate, and also making sure that we're continuously improving the environment in which investors operate. And also by, as we have said previously, upgrading all the products, making sure that for investors they see opportunities. In all the different sectors that we have developed throughout the years, we're looking at niche markets. An example in biotechnology, we're now looking at ways of encouraging people to invest in biotechnology, doing research. In the ICT BPO sector, we're going upscale in terms of data centers, in financial services. So creating an environment where investors would see an opportunity and a competitive advantage to locate in Mauritius. And I think that has been all throughout the strategy of government. We realize that we're not immune to the global financial crisis. It's reaching our shores. And the strategy of Mauritius has been of diversification, of looking at ways and means of attracting investment from other centers, China, India, even from Africa now we're seeing some interest. So all to say that we are conscious of the fact that the global economy is changing, and the strategy of government and of the whole Mauritius corporation is really to see how we can thrive further in this climate of uncertainty, making sure that the fundamentals remain strong in Mauritius, and making sure that, for example, in terms of the macroeconomic policy, these are sustained, the budget deficit is kept at a low level, because that gives confidence to investors, to institutional investors, when they're looking at a country to invest in.
Something that shakes confidence, though, George, is when you come into a country and suddenly there's this massive unemployment rate. Mauritius' first quarter data, unemployment up to 8.7%. With only 1.3 million people, that's quite a large number. And if you take into account that 50% of the 8.7 is youth under the age of 29. How do you address this, and what does it boil down to? Because education plays a large part in upskilling your labor force. So where is the disconnect?
8%, is it massive in the first place? Considering the fact that, okay, we have 50,000 people unemployed, officially registered as unemployed, but at the same time, in the same breath, we have more than 40,000 imported labor. How do you explain this? I think we need to look at it closely. Why are certain jobs that Mauritians don't want to embrace? And we need to employ 40,000 people. Many work in textile factories, and textile factories used to be a place of choice for female employment to take a job from. This is one. And then one has to distinguish between the actual from the potential. You said that, okay, we're going to achieve probably 3.5, or maybe less than 3%. But I think we have a potential of 5-6%. It's a guess, but I think it should be there if we do certain things. I mean, private companies, for example, doesn't have the incentive to set up courses for productivity improvement, for example. In public sector, there is a huge potential for productivity improvement, like destined to improve decision-making process, for example. In the year to come, there is a major project. It is in the pipeline, but I think it will get executed, the light railway transit system. It's a huge investment by Mauritian standard, probably 25 billion rupees. And that will lead perhaps to a secondary activities like construction, building, trade, and that is employment generating. So I think that if we have 50,000 people unemployed, one has to question, why do we still need foreign labor? And what is the potential for Mauritius to grow? And I think there are small things and bigger things which we can do to improve the situation, and which is going to be indeed employment generating.
But George, is not sometimes a mismatch of skills?
Yeah.
Mauritius is moving to a more sophisticated economy with ICT, with biomedical services, with financial services. If you look at the so-called unskilled laborers who work in your factories, who work in your construction sites, how can they be reabsorbed, but they need retraining and reskilling to be able to work in this new economy?
This is, again, where the potential is. I mean, look at textile, financial services, banking. There is really no proper training structure. If we get the structure right, I mean the professional training program right, if government comes forward with a consistent planning, for example, a plan to upgrade skill, as you said, I think there is much potential there. And it's really maybe a weakness, but if we can turn it around into a strength, I think there are a few points growth there on its own.
Raj, we can't, Ken, go ahead.
One or 2 points. In all the sectors, we're seeing that we're creating opportunities. At the same time, the government throughout has been supporting the industries to make sure that jobs are maintained. In times of crisis, we have created certain funds, resilience funds, and certain support to assist enterprises so that they don't lay off people. In terms of reskilling, training capacity, there's a lot of investment that is being put in place. And last year there has been a program for youth employment program to absorb people in the sectors, different sectors, and I think it's working very well in terms of absorbing the youth. There's also an initiative to to encourage the youth to get into entrepreneurship. There's an accelerator program, which is like an incubator, and we've done it for some years now, so that we can encourage the youth to get into business. And I think these are some of the initiatives that will complement. Obviously, as I said, we are not immune to the financial crisis, but these are concrete actions that the government is taking to making sure that we face the challenges that are looming ahead.
But Raj, government can't do everything. Sorry, George, just to finish this point. Government can't do everything, and they can't pay for everything. There's a role for the private sector. Skills training, vocational training, internships. How much is being done from that perspective to grow the joblessness base? And I mean, when you sit with young people, they have a lot of potential, but perhaps just need the opportunity to reach that.
I mean, just to add to this program of youth employment program, which is a skills working group. In fact, it is both public and private, where the companies and the government, they share the cost for the training and for the 1 year placement in the company in terms of 50% of the stipend, which is paid for the trainee during that year period. And as at today, under the youth employment program, which I co-chair with someone from finance, we have already placed around 1,200. It is essentially trying to connect the mismatch by having a database of all those who are unemployed, getting companies to connect to that database, and then giving the training and the 1 year placement, but 50% of that training cost and of the placement cost been shared jointly by the public and the private program. We believe that this program could be an eye-opener, and we have now to see in different sectors how do we move forward. I would like maybe just to have a comment with respect to the growth going down from 5 to around 3% in, if I may say, post-global financial crisis. I think Mauritius have been very Eurocentric, be it our tourism, be it our ICT, be it our other products, even textile. And therefore, to diversify will take some time, get the product will take time. At the same time, we are facing a structural problem of moving out of a preference-led economy. Our export was very much operating under some special arrangements, which we've lost today. And now we are moving toward full export competitiveness. So we have to tackle 2 or 3 problems at the same time. One is diversifying our exports, then readjusting the product in terms of the new environment. At the same time, taking care of moving from a low skill preference to a high skill without preference, which is being done. So diversification, extremely important, but then definitely the 27% of unemployed among our youth is something which cannot be sustained for long, and we have really to work on that. So the program of youth employment program where private sector co-shares, and then also private sector contributes to a training levy which they can use for training. This has been there for some time, but I think during difficult time and mismatch of skill, these type of programs will have special meaning, and we have to revisit that. So I think we have a basis whereby public and private could work, but we have to revisit those programs as we have just done the one for the youth employment program in terms of being more specific, trying to look at different sectors with skills, but also the product, so that at the end of the day we can really reduce the unemployment among the youth. Just a final word on unemployment. Though we have around 8.3 unemployment on the year, in fact, it is unemployment among the youth and among female gender, because among men it is around 4.5%. So we have a real problem.
You have a gender disparity.
We have a gender, for especially those who lost their jobs in textile, and today they cannot re-enter the market. So there are some specific issues which will have to be looked at. But I think to be quite fair, the economic fundamentals, our debt today is only 54% of GDP, so we don't have a sovereign debt problem per se. Ken has said our budget deficit is below 2%, so that's extremely important. But we have a restructuring of the economy, looking at the skills, moving from a low skill to a high skills, in a non-preference sort of export sector.
George, you've been burning to follow
Well,
up.
yes, I just wanted to make reference to youth unemployment. Indeed, a big proportion of unemployment is made up of youth unemployment. But again, there we don't have to reinvent the wheel. In Singapore and Hong Kong, they made broadband universal. You know that technology, broadband, and youth, they go hand in hand.
Yes.
And you know that the rate of penetration of broadband in Mauritius is only 35%. And 65% is really the potential. And if we can get policies right with respect to introduction of broadband into households and into corporates, I think you might find solution there for youth unemployment.
James, the last word on this topic is yours.
I think it's been said pretty much, but it's a skills mismatch. And the one thing I know there's a lot of initiatives going on, but still the one thing that worries me is that we could be a victim of our success because we are attracting a lot of interest in the BPO, in legal services, in banking. You know, if big investments were made by a bunch of corporations and they needed 200 private bankers, 200 treasury dealers.
Still the traditional markets.
You know, we're going to struggle to fill that. So how we're going to open up the economy to match that expectation will be the challenge. So we're going to have to get through this employment issue quickly, because with our success is going to come high expectations. People want to expand here and expand rapidly, and then we don't want to have them disappointed that they can't find the skill sets.
Well, that's definitely a topic for another day. Ladies and gentlemen, we now give you the opportunity to engage with our panel. And we actually have our first question or statement from Mr. Jacques Duneville, CEO of Omnicane. If we can just get the microphone to him, please.
Thank you very much. I am Jacques Duneville. I am the CEO of Omnicane. We are a company based in Mauritius. producing energy and sugar. And I just wanted maybe to make a statement just to see how Mauritius can be used as a platform for investment in Africa. I've got maybe three examples. 2 years ago, we were approached by Kenyans who wanted to set up a sugar project in Kenya. They needed expertise to do it, and they needed the project to be bankable. So we were chosen to accompany them. And in the process, we managed to raise the finance for the project. It's a $200 million project. So most of the finance was raised through banks in Mauritius. Legal services were also, a lot of them were provided from Mauritius. And the whole expertise to actually go into the production of sugar and electricity was through a Mauritian company. I think this now, the deal has been closed. Its production is going to start within a year from now. A second example, we've been approached by a French company who wants to develop hydroelectric power station into Africa, with the first project going on in Rwanda, and now they're prospecting in another 5 countries. So the idea was to set up a Mauritian company, partnering with Mauritian companies as well, to raise the finance and to go for investments in Africa. Advantage of doing that is obviously the DTAs that Mauritius has with Africa, investment protection agreements. So the cost, for example, of political insurance to invest in these countries is much cheaper when there is an investment protection agreement signed with these countries. So it makes it very efficient to use a Mauritian structure to do that, both for the equity side and for the banks as well, to finance Mauritian vehicles in these countries. A third example is a British company who we're also partnering with. They have great products, great brands. Africa consumption, for example, of sugar is growing at a rapid rate in Africa. There is a huge deficit. So they by themselves were not very comfortable to go in these countries as they don't have the experience of Africa per se. So they were more comfortable to go with a Mauritian partner to tap in the potential of these African markets. So I think this is just starting, and there are many more ventures like that that could be put with Mauritius as a base. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jacques. Just again, gentlemen, an example of how Mauritius is growing and being again that bridge and that springboard onto the continent. Raise of hands, are there any questions? Gentleman at the back.
Maxim King, CEO of London Satellite Systems, Mauritius. Okay, we are in broadcasting as well and trying to expand in different fields. But for now, the question goes to the panel. Maybe some of them can answer, or how to get Mauritius to be more successful, probably. We were talking last time about it, low-cost airline, because connectivity to go to Africa has not been too easy. To fly into Africa, transit time can be too long. So to make Mauritius more successful and to bring more people around here, to make it a real hub or gateway, I definitely believe there's room for a low-cost airline. The question goes to the panel. Thank you.
By Maxim is a very pertinent one. You know, in Mauritius, there have been some major progress done with respect to the whole of telecoms environment. The laws were changed in 1998, were updated again in 2001. We have an independent regulator. We have an environment which is pro-business, but yet I think we have an issue with respect to the price of broadband and the speed of broadband. I think these two issues are known to be obstacles if we want not only to connect with the world, but even to make the whole of ICT sector, contributing better to the economy. Now, some policy measures have been taken in trying to bring the competition, and there are new players coming, but yet it is an issue, and I think this is an area where we will have to make progress very fast if we want to really implement that vision of Mauritius being a platform for the region. Telecommunication is still, broadband is still too expensive and the speed is too low, and we have to work on that. Secondly, in terms of air connectivity, there's no doubt about it that Mauritius had an air access policy which was very Eurocentric, which did serve its purpose. I think today we need a more diversified air access policy. It is an area where the private sector has been trying to push forward, okay? So we need to tackle the issue of having, again, an independent regulatory body with air access, and also then to see what is the best policy in terms of diversifying and bringing competition. It is clear today that the air access policy that Mauritius had in the past has to be reviewed. It's been reviewed. There are some openings taken up, but we need visibility, we need clarity if we want to be a platform for Africa.
Anyone to follow up?
Well, I think improvement in connectivity seems to be inevitable within the African continent. I think it's a matter of time.
With the landing of the sea cables,
That's
new
right.
players.
If we think in terms of 10, 15 years ahead, Africa will boom on infrastructure. It's not boom yet. I don't think that 5% rate could be termed as economic boom. And it's forthcoming. It's inevitable that there will be trains, there will be motorways, airports will be improved within Africa. And what Mauritius needs to do is really put the question, how can we connect to that big boom? By air, by sea, by telecommunications. I think in a time span of 15 years, I see things really being on a development phase well ahead of what obtains today.
Another question.
I'm Ben Lim. I'm the CEO of Intercontinental Trust company in Mauritius. My question is open to the panel. We've talked about the population of Mauritius, 1.3 million. I call it a base load of 1.3 million. We all agree it's not enough, so we're trying to attract more people into Mauritius. So my question is a Mauritius society ready to accept more people from overseas into Mauritius, be it Chinese, Indian, or our friends from Africa? My second leg of the question is with regard to those people who are already here, the expats, the foreign workers, what can be done to help them to integrate the society in Mauritius. We don't want the expat to be tucked away in the luxury villas. We don't want them to be cocooned away on the beach somewhere. We want them to be part of the Mauritian society. So what can be done?
Well, as an expatriate yourselves, James, let's ask your perception.
Well, as a
on that.
Canadian, I can say I felt very welcome here. I'm welcome enough that I came back 6 years ago to create the bank. So, not an issue on an individual, not a problem on an individual basis. But I guess the question is, how much immigration would we be prepared to accept? Certainly, I don't think in any near time soon we're wanting to go down the route of Dubai or Singapore. But clearly, we're going to have to have a policy thought about this, how much we want to open up the market to do all the things that we're trying to do in Africa. But I think it's just a matter of something to work through in a sensitive way. And I agree that integration is key. I live in the center of the island, although I do go to the beach on the weekends. But I try and live and have a normal professional working life. So I think and Mauritius is a very welcoming place for that. But I think as we scale up, how do we do that better? Or how do we continue to do that will be a challenge.
Ken, if there is a boom, how do we manage this?
Well, first of all, I would like to say that from the business perspective, Mauritius has always been very liberal in its approach. So anyone, a foreigner that wants to set up business here doesn't need to have a local partner, so they are free to come. On the personal side, I would say that we have decided on a policy to open up the country further. So we've decided to attract skills, know-how, talents to the country. We have a scheme which allows that to happen. And there are also certain policies that government has adopted to making sure that when the foreigners come to Mauritius, first of all, they feel welcome, and secondly, they have a work-life kind of balance here in Mauritius. So there are schemes to provide permanent residency to citizens, provided they meet certain criteria, and we are continuously improving that mechanism to make sure that it works. At the same time, we have liberalized in terms of the acquisition of properties. There are certain schemes for high net worth individuals, and for the permanent residents, they are also allowed to buy property in Mauritius, in apartments. So this is the policy as it is today, and we're open to discussions. We're seeing what our competitors are doing, and certainly from the policy making perspective, we'll feed this information to our policymakers.
Unfortunately, we've run out of time. I think a perfect note to leave it. Mauritius is open for business. It's growing. It will grow even more. And with its expansion and bridging plans into Asia and Africa, it should have a keen and bright future. Gentlemen, I'd like to thank you for joining us today. We've come to the end of this special broadcast. Thank you for staying with CNBC Africa. Until next time, it's goodbye.